Loud thunder, heavy rain, thin line between joy and pain. It's a long, strange trip, it's all insane. You ain't never gonna be the same. Living life through the night, thin line.
Okay, Tater, so here we are. It is outside, it's about 15 degrees. Got the knife. I went through and stropped the edge before dinner, and then I just had lunch with it. It cut through food very nicely. What I'm curious about is, since it largely cut with the belly, that did the ceramic from the plate dull the edge off at all. So what I'm going to do is, I've got my carving baton and a piece of cedar. You can see there's some knots in there. Then we're going to go through, we're going to baton this down. I've got my fire pit over here. We're going to baton the piece of cedar, try to feather stick just a little bit, and try to get a fire started. So that is test number 2. Well, yeah, it's test number 2. Oh yeah, I've got my emergency bag here as well. Here it is. I'm really impressed with the point. Very nicely done. Fire kit. Just lots of nice little fine stuff. Now I am cheating just a little bit here because I'm using cedar wood, which has a great deal of oil in it. So in theory, it should light easily. All right, so we're gonna check with a flint and steel. Oh, it sparks up nice. All right. All right, so I just realized that at one point my camera fell and for some reason it turned off. So I went ahead and using your knife and just a ferro rod, I was able to, within I think 3 strikes, get a fire started. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough curls to get the small stuff, or I didn't have enough small stuff probably to get it started. But I did get a fire lit. And I'm trying to think what would be the next appropriate thing to check. Normally, I know one of the things that folks check is the vertical shake. And this knife is very sharp. It has a wonderful point on it. I mean, it's a needle point, just gorgeous. That I would be afraid of doing something to it. So I think I don't know. If I come up with another test, I'll get you on it. In the meantime, I'm not sure. I'm going to enjoy letting my fire burn out here, and I'll come back to you in a couple minutes. One other thing I thought of is the idea of notching. So I've got this piece of wood here. Now I'm going to say granted that this wood is very straight grain, but that's a nice looking one right there. Just quick, there's another one. Just lever grip. Hogs off a nice little amount there. You know, one of the signs of a sharp knife is that when it goes through the wood, it leaves like a shiny finish. I don't know if you can see that very well on there, but it is neat and clean. No splinters whatsoever. It smells nice too. Just hogged off a bunch. It feels good in hand. I really like the tip. And you could, I have it all in my bag to do stuff like this, but if you needed to, that tip would definitely get in there. Didn't break or anything. Nice We'll round it out whole. So this the other thing I could do would be chop with it. Give me a second to get set up for that. We're gonna go ahead and use this to just kind of chop this down into some kind of a point. Nothing fancy. Normally I would use my hatchet, but I've got this and we're testing it. So we'll there it is. That was very easy. Realistically, I had a quality point long before I decided to stop. I just wanted to put a nice little pointy on there. But you can see there how clean and smooth all the, just neatly done. Very sharp, very nice. All right. Let's reconvene in the house. All right, so I'm back inside, and let's compare some of my favorite knives here. All right, this is a more robust. I really like this knife. The biggest problem I have with it is it's not through tang. Tang only goes to like about there. But it's got a thicker spine than a lot of the Moras, and it has a scanty grind. Now that scanty grind can be really good, but it can be really bad too. I was out hiking one time, my knife fell out of its sheath and it landed point down, and it just jacked up the point. It really hurt it, and it took a long time to get that knife back into the condition that I wanted it in. This knife has a very comfortable feel, but that scanty edge is a little bit on the fragile side. So that's, and you can tell how much this one's used by just the staining and gunk on the blade right there. All right, so that's one of them. Oh, and this one does not strike a ferro rod. It's got a rounded spine, so it does not do that. But it's not designed to either. Another one of my favorites is the Gerber Prodigy. This is a through tang knife. That's the tang right there, and it is a one-piece tang, so it goes all the way through. It isn't technically a rat. Some people call it a rat tail. I don't think it is. I convexed the edge on this, and it is super sharp. The problem that it has is occasionally a little bit of edge retention. You can tell that this one has been used and abused quite a bit. It's got a really thick spine, which makes some things really hard. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is just a nice utility knife. Sparks the ferro rod well. It's comfortable in hand. When it gets cold outside, it doesn't get cold to hold because it's got this nice grippy handle. When it gets wet, it holds well. It's just a nice knife to have. Sometimes I love them, sometimes I hate them, sometimes I love to hate them. It has the serrated teeth, and Gerber has nice enough serrated teeth that you can actually kind of resharpen them, which is nice, and they're good for doing some things, but at the same time they're kind of an annoying thing to have on occasion. So this is also one of my favorites. It's one that generally is either in contention to go in my emergency bag, or it's one that is in my emergency bag, either way. And then it's got a Tech-Lock sheet to go with it. Another one, this is a Tops Bob. This is not what it should look like. This one was stripped off. This has got a Scandi Vex edge on it that I went over and convexed the edge just a little bit. That's why it's shiny there towards the base, or towards the edge. Very thick spine. As you can see there, this one strikes a ferro rod as it currently is. Normally there's a black coating on this down to about there, and then the edge is not coated, and the coating makes it unable to strike a ferro rod. This knife, the downside of it is, like right now, because it's 15 degrees outside and it's been outside, it's kind of cool to hold on to because of that exposed tang right there, and then those G10 scales just don't do a whole lot to keep everything warm. Wood is helpful in some things. So there's this one. It's got a bow drill divot in the handle. You can do that with any knife. It's not that big a whoop. But this is one I've owned. This particular knife, I think this is the 4th one I've owned. I keep buying them, trading them, selling them, whatever. And it's a nice knife, but I don't think it's as cracked up as everyone thinks it is. So that's this one, and it's the one that you might have seen in the video is actually on the side of my bag. So lastly, it brings us up to the Nickolaide Blade Works knife, and that's this one. And there's a lot of things I really admire about this knife. One, it strikes the ferro rod beautifully all the way down to the tip. The tip struck it real nice. You just got to be careful because as thin as the tip gets, I mean, as thin as the tip gets, you could actually damage the temper with a ferro rod if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. So you got to be wise to that. I put a little roll on the edge at some point during the course of the day. I'm not sure when or how. Prior to using it, I went through and stropped the edge just a little bit. I generally do that before I go out with any of my knives just to make sure that they're clean and any possible burrs are off of them. So what I did with this knife was I went through and I ate lunch with it. I started a fire with it, feather sticked and, you know, split wood and all that with it. And then I went through and did some notching, just some kind of basic camp craft kind of things. And then I went through and used it to chop with. Now, I'm not a big fan of using a knife to chop with unless it's a knife designed to do that. So like my kukri, I will chop with. I have I think a Wetterling's hatchet on the side of my bag, and I'll chop with that. But on the whole, my belt knife is not something I really want to chop with, so bear that in mind. This knife was outside as well, and the handle is nowhere near as cold as my other one, and that has to do with the fact that there's wood scales on it. They are warmer to the touch just because of nature of what they are. So this is a more comfortable knife in terms of that. It's a nice thick knife as well, but it tapers as the blade goes down, which gives it a very nice profile, and then also makes it very usable, that it's very comfortable to use. It's got a nice little recurve on the edge that allows it to it just gives it a nice feel. One of the things I really appreciate about this is that as you move down the knife blade, it isn't the big bulky one. And I can already tell you, having handled this knife, at some point I'll do something with this, but I can already tell you, food preparation, this will be phenomenal. Something I didn't talk about to this point is this is a full flat convexed edge, which means that it's going to cut through food real easy. You'll see there's no shoulders on it. It's just going to slide through whatever it's cutting, right through, no questions asked. I've got my Gerber right here. This also is a flat grind, but because of its thickness and the fact that it has shoulders, it does not process food well. And then you got like this one that has those shoulders as well on the Scandi grind, and it does not, it can, but it doesn't do as good a job. Scandi grinds are not meant for food prep, game, that kind of thing. They're meant for wood camp tasks like that. If you wanted to cut your steak with it for dinner, this would do fine. I've done it. But that's not what it was primarily thought of. This knife, on the other hand, I can already tell you would do a phenomenal job at that. There's no marks on the back of the blade from where it was batoned. The places where it was batoned on the edge, there's no damage to the edge. There's just one little spot up by the tip that looks like it's rolled some, and I'm really not sure why. I don't recall doing anything up there that would roll it, but you know, it could have just been sticking it in the stump at one point. I really like the traditional styling of this knife. It is super comfortable in hand because of that. It's a really nice knife. Very well done, Nickolaide Blade Works. Really like it. Thanks, Tater. Gorgeous, gorgeous knife. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's beautiful, love it, totally use it. It's very possible that this will be the one on my belt and the other ones will just be on my pack as an extra in case something happens, that this will be the primary one I carry. I really, really like this knife. It feels nimble. It doesn't feel weak. It feels like it'll get the job done. I really dig this knife. All the various handles, ways to hold it aren't uncomfortable. You can tell that it wasn't meant to be held this way, but it's not uncomfortable. This is comfortable. You know, holding it a slightly more fighting style is comfortable. Reverse grip is also comfortable. It's just a really nice knife. I thoroughly appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing to use it and letting you know what I think. When I initially stropped it, you could shave with the entire length of the blade. I'm not sure I got a whole lot of arm hair left on my arm. We'll do the belly here. I don't know if you can see all that, but that is hair all the way up the blade. So it's still definitely sharp. Very nicely done. Oh, look at this on both sides. Very nicely done, Josh from Nickolaide Blade Works. I'll be trying to get more. So that's it, Tate. I love it. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to being able to monkey around with it a little bit more. In the meantime, Merry Christmas. God bless. I look forward to seeing you when I'm in Illinois. Bye-bye.
Minds are racing. It's hard to sleep, man.